Let's party.
Hello and welcome to Party Loaded episode 230 for God, what is it now? We're still in September. It's Wednesday the 16th of September, 2020. That year again. We will never escape it. My name is Luke Retallick. Welcome to the show. Joining me tonight we have, of course, on my what's that tonight for me? My left, my right. Adrian's there. Adrian's here. And at the top of the pyramid, at the peak, we have Christian Paulson Brown. Hey.
I have arisen.
You've arisen. You're the peak of the trapezoid pyramid scheme model of whatever.
You've peaked, Christian.
I peaked. It's all downhill from here.
This is it.
It's a slippery slope. Absolutely.
It's a sharp drop. Let's face it.
Yeah. I've always thought you were cute. So yeah. So, guys.
You were right.
Oh man. So I am, I think for the first time in God knows how long, not actually podcasting with a hoodie on tonight, and it feels good. It's actually freaking warm compared to...
The weather is changing, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's about freaking time.
Why though? Why can't it just stay cold? I hate the heat.
Well, actually, it's given me a timely reminder that my days of beat sabering in comfort are probably numbered at this point. So... Which is a shame because I have been enjoying that, but yeah.
I feel like I would really enjoy Beat Saber if I could afford it at all. I feel like it's one area of gaming that I am seriously missing out on is some of the good VR stuff. Like
you've got your Ring Fit though. Are you still actively ring fitting?
Well, actually, not super actively, but every couple of days I'll try and catch up to Shantae, my wife, who was. She just before we started the podcast, she was doing it over there, and she did like 2 hours of Ring Fit. So she's getting right into it.
I've noticed that. You know how Beat Saber streams on Twitch have been like a thing for like quite a while now. People are using the full sort of green screen backdrop and superimposing themselves in the game, and you know all the creative kind of angles sort of stuff. I've been seeing a lot of that for Ring Fit over the last month. It's become like a new thing. So. Which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, she really enjoys. She likes to dance. So she really enjoys like the dancing minigame. It's still quite an interesting evolution. Me watching her play, especially now that she's further into the game, and she's starting to unlock more of the RPG elements of the game. So you start off and it's like random encounters, like in an RPG, and you only got a couple of attacks, and then it layers on things like type matching and items and things like that. So tonight she was like making smoothies, which are like usable items. And she's like, you pick up like crafting components during the campaign, and then you can use those crafting components to like use the ring to make them into smoothies, which are in-game items that like restore health and boost attack and that kind of thing. And I didn't say it at the time, but I was thinking of saying to her, like, that's like, she's slowly being sort of introduced to like RPG elements of games, like item use and like attacks that hit multiple enemies and just the RPG stuff in of itself. So
and there's like a currency and a shop that you buy.
Yeah,
you buy like clothes from. You buy like shirts and pants and stuff that give you bonuses.
Yeah. Things like stat bonuses and that kind of thing. So, I mean, she plays Animal Crossing, but obviously a totally different style of game. So, I did consider. I was like, I wonder if I could bait her into playing like an actual JRPG after this because it's got similar elements. But I don't know.
Is there anything you could theoretically play together in that realm? I'm wondering. A
JRPG. I don't know. Probably just take turns playing something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's true.
RPGs tend to be solo experiences, don't they? Not many.
Yeah. I don't know if she would invest in like a full RPG because of the time sink in that, because she likes to just play pickup stuff. So But yeah, she's.
I just think, as a collaborative experience, it's by no means the same as an RPG, but something that I think I actually stand by this as being a really fun thing to do with someone else as opposed to playing solo is any of those found footage type games like Her Story and that more recent one that I talked about a little while back, which I'm just trying to remember the name of, Telling Lies. Yeah. Where you're sort of going through archival video footage and trying to piece the story together, but you have to sort of discuss together how you're going to search for the next piece of footage and kind of discuss what it means as part of a story.
Right.
Yeah, they're really, really cool. I mean, it's kind of RPG in the sense that you're playing the role of the investigator, trying to, slot the puzzle pieces of the story together. But, yeah, totally different to your usual,
I think, like, Telltale style games are good for, like, non-gamers.
Yeah, I was thinking of that. I was thinking of what's it called? Time Travel Girl.
Oh, Life is Strange.
Life is Strange. I was thinking of that, but the thing that's made me stop that is I can't figure out a quick and effective way to get it onto the TV from the computer. Tried Chromecasting, but the delay is too strong. And blah blah blah.
Bit tricky, yeah.
We'll sort something out, maybe.
Yeah. Side note: when you said what did you say, making smoothies? Because we were talking about exercise, it brought to mind a stupid joke that I heard ages ago. Because when you're talking about exercise and making smoothies, my brain went to doing squats. And the reason for that is because of this stupid joke that I heard when I was a kid, which is, how does Mr. Whippy take a shit? And it's basically, you'd like do a squat and move your butt around. Anyway, stupid joke. It just reminded me of the two things. Moving on. Great start to the show. Talking about
these are jokes that shape your sense of humour, Luke.
They really are. They really, really are. Yeah.
In a way, there is a downside to being a live podcast.
Or an upside. On the topic of the Beat Saber stuff, the thing that's also been in my mind this week, given that we're finally, in theory, like we suspect that we're about to learn the final sort of price of the PS5 because there's a big PlayStation conference on, I think it's like 4 a.m. our time tomorrow morning, where, all indications are that now that Xbox pricing has gone out there, that PlayStation will follow suit and we'll finally be able to pre-order the damn thing. Given how close it's coming to the PS5 releasing, I've had a couple of conversations with people at work about, are you going to be on that first wave of picking it up on release, and why would you be part of the early adopters essentially and do that kind of thing? And I thought long and hard about it because rationally my brain is like, okay, I don't need to be, because I know the library is going to be very slim on release, but I realize what the justification is for me, and I suspect for a lot of other people too. It's that people who are actively playing PS4 at the moment probably still want to continue to do that, but on a faster machine with the same games, because if they can use all their PS4 games, then great. But for me, it's also the VR thing. Like, I actually want to have my dedicated VR machine that I can have in another place in my hobby room and not have to move my console around when I want to play at my desk versus sort of in a space where I can move around. So, such a first world problem, I know. But
some people don't even have VR, Luke.
No, I know.
In this very podcast.
Yeah.
For me, like, getting a PS5 on launch, it's a question of, like, I know I'm going to get a PS5. If I don't get one on launch, I'd still get one before a price drop. Like, I would never wait, because it would probably take 2 years until there's a price drop.
Yeah.
So why not just get one on launch? And I'm going to be spending the exact same amount of money.
Yeah.
So,
you get to be part of that enjoyment of having it for the early stuff that comes out. You might get lucky during Black Friday sales or something like that, but again, that's like a year away. So
yeah.
No, is there any risk of not being able to get one on launch?
Yes.
Well, it seems like there genuinely might be this time. There's been.
And then how long will I have to wait? Probably until there's more.
That's the question. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I got an email from EB Games today, like this 3-page thing detailing how to pre-register for your pre-order. Where you get the item in your cart already, and make sure you've got payment details already saved, and make sure you've got your store already picked, so that when pre-orders go live, it's just 2 clicks and then you've placed it, and there's a guide to it.
Yeah. Part of me wonders how much of that is like a genuine PSA versus trying to simulate hype that results in sales. Logically, they don't need to do that because they know they're going to sell out of the units. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brother-in-law works at JB right now, so with Mario 3D All Stars. He just came up to me. He's like, "Hey, do you want one of them?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Cool, just put one aside." So I'm hoping that he might be able to do that when it comes to consoles.
That'd be good. Yeah.
Depending on how much checking.
I do appreciate that EB Games, if you have previous purchases on your account, you get a higher priority in the pre-order thing. So like just to stop people creating like spam accounts with no purchase history.
Yeah.
So that's one little measure they've taken to, support the actual consumers instead of scalpers.
That makes sense. Yeah, I like that. In a way that kind of echoes in a slightly different way what they did with the PlayStation Online stuff, where they would allocate pre-order positions in the queue to people depending on their PlayStation Network status. Which,
yeah, but that was like...
That was weird.
Vaguely dependent on your activity. So that was kind of like weirdness of maybe rewarding people with like higher trophy counts or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas this is just like, if nothing on your account, then you're probably a sock puppet and you can be written off, sort of thing.
If it's using it to weed that stuff out, I totally support that.
Yeah.
The other side of it, I don't hate that either, because the fact that people who put a lot of time and effort in and have like awesome sort of collections of platinum trophies and that sort of thing, part of me just thinks like, why shouldn't they be rewarded? It's a weird one. Yeah.
It's a rich get richer sort of situation though, right? Like give the little man a chance or two.
True. Yeah. Absolutely. Doesn't do much for the people they're trying to bring over for the Microsoft ecosystem either, because they're probably going to have a fresh kind of profile. But yeah.
But I mean, we didn't really talk about it, but that Sony official pre-order system is weird, because that's the very first time that Sony is selling hardware directly through themselves with no third party. Like Sony don't sell PS4s.
Don't they sometimes directly sell the special edition ones though?
I haven't heard of it, but like I know that they don't sell PS4s online standard. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So this is interesting that they're going to be cutting out retailers in some way to sell them directly.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. All right. Well, speaking of interesting stuff, let's get on to some actual game talk this week. So, now, I'm going to save you guys because I know you've probably, you want your 5 minutes of Destiny. We'll get to it at a later point if we need to. And I want to talk about Marvel's Avengers. Yeah. Now, Matt is not here with us tonight. He's feeling a bit poorly, which is a shame, because he actually got to see me play a bit of Avengers on stream last week. So I would have liked to hear some of his feedback, but I think he's on chat anyway, so if he needs to chime in, he can. So I have played a good solid... I think week and a half of Avengers now, because it came out Friday a couple of weeks ago, just after we did the last episode. And I can't say that I haven't had a pretty good time with this game. It's been an interesting ride. I've been watching the online sort of buzz for it, and a lot of the reviews that have been written and come out and have criticised different aspects of it, and their live service sort of side to the game is definitely got some issues. But I guess what I'd say is that most of the stuff that you've read about this game is probably fairly accurate. Like, the general consensus, which I tend to agree with, is that it's a game that is overall better than we probably expected. I think that it kind of succeeds against itself in a lot of ways. The single player story campaign is by far the highlight. They actually did a really, really good job with that. And I had a great time playing through the campaign. Which was not super long. Like, it was probably about 10, 12 hours worth of content, but I think in that way it was good. It didn't overstay its welcome. Like, it was a nice experience. And it's one of those games that, to me, I can draw a lot of comparisons between it and Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, in that when that released, we had that sense that it was a game that kind of had the potential for greatness, but it suffered a bit from being unpolished and had quite a few issues on launch that felt like it had been rushed out the door a bit too quickly. So... which, with that one's timing being just before Christmas, I can kind of get that they were trying to get it out in time for those sales. But with Avengers, like, I really wonder why they couldn't have just waited another month or so to resolve some of that stuff, because some of it's pretty glaring and pretty weird that they've omitted polishing certain details. I'm talking about... I'll get the bad stuff out of the way, and then I'll talk about the good stuff. So in terms of the general bugginess, I think that... there's instances where like you're in a mission. This is mostly the sort of multiplayer and online stuff. The campaign for the most part's all right. Where you might be in a mission where there's like a requirement to clear all the enemies in a particular area, and they don't all spawn at the same time. Like you get some that spawn in late, and then you might have a situation where like there's a drone that you have to take out, which gets stuck behind a door that won't open, and then you're stuck and you can't kill everything. So you're like, okay, got to load in again. Do this over again. That sort of stuff's not super common, but it does happen. There's instances of things not sort of spawning when they should on occasion. There's weird... the loading screens are not great. They're not Anthem on release level of obscene, but it's noticeable, particularly when you're doing a level that involves jumping puzzles, and sometimes when you die and load back into the level, it actually gives you a loading screen before you appear again, which is a bit shit. So that was not great. The multiplayer stuff seems to work okay for the most part, but there's a lot of simple stuff that they need to add to make it a better kind of player experience. Like the methods of communication are very lacking. It would be good if they added something like a simple ping system, where if you have like a door that you need to open and you've got a character like Captain America who's not real good at opening doors because he doesn't have like a power smash attack like Hulk does, where he can just sort of smash through
Captain
things.
America trait, can't open doors.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Well, I mean, I think back to that scene where he had the lift fight in Winter Soldier and he just smashes out the side of it. That's totally true, so yeah. But yeah, like stuff like that, you want to be able to direct your team members to be able to interact with those things, or if you want like Black Widow to hack something or Iron Man to hack something or that kind of thing, you don't have an easy way to communicate with them unless you've organised a party outside of the game kind of thing. So that's a bit lacking. But yeah, for the most part, I think that the sort of multiplayer and online experience is fun, but does get repetitive, especially in terms of the enemies that you're fighting, because most of the game is robots. Like you can see from a lot of the footage that you've probably seen in the trailers and things like that. Like there's a lot of sort of synthoids, they're called, and sort of robotic. I don't know what would you even call them? They're kind of
robots.
There's another word they use for it, which I'm failing to recall at the moment. There's definitely synthoids.
Androids?
Adaptoids was another one.
Adaptoids.
Yeah, the adaptoids, the reason why they're called...
Nendoroids.
No. Nendoroids. The adaptoids actually sort of mimic... they mimic some of the superhero abilities, because the whole thing... Like, the Inhumans is a big part of the plot. Yeah, actually, it's exactly like that. You pretty much hit it bang on. And ironically, Adrian, the very sort of end of the game has you up against something that reminds me a lot of Master Mold from X-Men, sort of on the Sentinel theme. So, yeah. It's
a good way to reuse work you've put into developing a game to give the baddies the abilities of the good guys already.
It's not a straight one for one though. Like it's kind of more of a light theming. So yeah, and I think it's mostly done with an elemental theme in mind. Like because there's kind of like there's stuff in the game that has like ice attacks and fire attacks and gamma attacks, which is kind of like their equivalent of poison or sort of acid, I guess. And the adaptoids model those more closely because they actually have like an in-game effect depending on the damage type. And some of the gear that you can spec out with have like various resistances or bonuses to that kind of stuff too. So, yeah.
Let's face it, fighting hordes of robots is the sci-fi version of zombies.
It really is, yeah. And there's a lot more variety than zombies, but particularly when it comes to the bigger stuff. But it's kind of aesthetically, it does get tiresome. I don't think mechanically it's too bad because there's enough variety in the way that they behave that it actually adds a bit of challenge. Like you'll quite often come up against cyborgs that have like energy shields and you can't just like pummel them head on. You've actually got to do creative stuff and try and get behind them or leap over them or under them or, certain types of attacks to break their shields and that kind of thing. And when they start to layer up, it gets a lot more complicated. It's very similar. Like the combat in that respect is very similar to the Arkham games actually, where you need to be a bit more precise in some of the sort of moves that you make to break stances and shields and stun enemies rather than just trying to do damage and kill them sort of over time. So I like that.
Yeah, they've accomplished the most basic of combat.
Well, when I talk about a single element
Been
of
around
it,
for a decade.
absolutely, it sounds pretty basic. But when you're adding them all together with different characters that have different superhero abilities, it definitely does get more complicated. So I'm probably underselling it. The combat's good. Like I don't think the combat's bad at all. It's just the sort of the aesthetic of the enemy types being all kind of robots is the thing that gets me down a bit. I don't think it's a mechanical issue. I think it's more of a theme issue, an environment issue, if you like. So yeah. But I don't know. Like overall, the game's pretty good. I went in with fairly low expectations and was pleasantly surprised after playing it for a bit. I don't know how much staying power it's going to have, given that.
That's what I was going to ask. Is
yeah,
how long are you going to stick with it? That's the like deciding factor for a live service game, right? Are you going to engage with the live service?
I don't think the live service aspects are particularly problematic at the moment. I think it's kind of the core gameplay loop that's more the thing that would determine it, because there's a lot of different styles of missions in the sort of post-game content, but and it's similar to like your Destiny loop where you've got things that are effectively like the equivalent of strikes, where you'll go in, you'll fight a bunch of baddies in a few different areas and then have like a boss battle to finish it off. And that's a cool, fun experience. But the number of them that you can do each week is actually limited at the moment. Like they've time-gated stuff, I think, unnecessarily, which I think is an odd choice. There's like vault missions, which you kind of go into and do like minor sort of code puzzles to unlock doors to get extra loot. So that's another variety of things you can do. There's more sort of open world style roaming sort of missions you can go into where you're running around multiplayer with other people and sort of looting extra chests and sort of I guess you can go off the beaten track a bit more to get gear. So there's a bit of variety, but I still feel like there's a bit too much sameness, and it's not the live service aspects that are letting it down. It's just the core gameplay options that are letting it down a bit. So yeah,
but because of that, you're not going to engage with the live service aspects, right?
The live service aspects, I think, actually sound appealing when they talk about like new characters that are getting added down the track or new mission types that are being added down the track, and the sort of getting gear aspect of it, and sort of upgrading it over time and trying out different builds and that kind of stuff. I think that actually is appealing. It's just it has to survive on top of the stuff that's samey, which I think is the problem. So yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is that as a live service game, I'm less likely to engage with it, but it's not because of the live service parts for me. It's because of the other stuff underneath that. If that makes sense. It's because of the game, yeah. It's because of the end game. The lessons they've taken from games like Destiny when it comes to the sort of live service approach, I think they've taken the right lessons, but they're building on a flawed foundation. Is kind of what I'm getting at. Yeah.
So. I was never into this game, no matter what. Really, I'm not really into Avengers, but I saw like a review and they had like a inventory screen with Hulk. And they were like equipping gear on Hulk, and it was just like something invisible under his skin that has no visual whatsoever. And he's just big green Hulk. I'm like, that's the least appealing thing in a loot game, is just invisible loot that is just numbers and is nothing else but numbers. Like, and I get that from a gameplay standpoint, or sure, they could be giving them different abilities or whatever, but just personally, in like invisible loot on Hulk is just. Like, that sounds awful.
Yeah, it's weird how they've done it. Like, I actually don't have an issue with that at all because they've done it for all of the characters. It's consistent the whole way through. And
so they consistently have no visual changes on the characters?
They have cosmetics, which you can...
Is loot separate to cosmetics?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the cosmetics are effectively skins that you can get and apply to the different characters. And
that's not the loot.
No,
the loot.
The loot is all invisible in terms of how it affects your gameplay.
What I like.
Yeah.
If they wanted this game to be good, what it should have been was the Avengers are guest characters and you play a custom superhero whose powers you can customize, loot you can equip, and visualness you can make. And you should be a new recruit that joins the Avengers. That's what this game should have been.
They kind of have done that a little bit. Yeah,
No, they haven't. You play as the Avengers.
Well, but the campaign especially is done through the eyes of Kamala Khan as Miss Marvel.
You're playing
who
Kamala
is
Khan.
a superhero, an established superhero?
She's not an established superhero.
Yes, she is.
No, not during the campaign. She becomes an Avenger throughout the
but
campaign.
she's an existing superhero.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You know what I mean, Luke. You're not you're not giving her ice powers or Iron Man powers or Hulk powers.
You want a fully blank slate, is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that would have been appealing because then you're giving the character like an avatar that you get to customize.
Yeah.
For me, this whole thing falls down because I think Matt's made some good points in the chat. It's just pure. It's like let's take orange juice and toothpaste and push them together to make a game. Like it's just the worst two things to go together because you're taking like established characters and trying to make them customizable. Like to me, it just seems like a shit idea. And I think like had they made it not even more like Destiny, more like City of Heroes or something like that, where you're able to fulfill like a superhero fantasy.
Yeah.
Because this is kind of a half measure where instead of getting your own customizable superhero or feeling like an awesome Iron Man, you're instead like some half-breed thing in a shit game.
I don't necessarily agree with that because I think that there's a kind of game where that fits and there's a kind of game where it doesn't. Because this would be almost like think of another character-driven game like Mortal Kombat. Okay, it would be like having a generic fighter in Mortal Kombat that you could customize, but it wouldn't have the same appeal as the rest of the roster. Like you play those games.
You're in Smash Brothers is what you're talking about.
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like you play those games because you actually enjoy inhabiting the skins of those characters that you know and love, and yeah.
Yeah, but that's very different because those characters, like Mortal Kombat, is not about leveling up and customizing those characters. It's about learning to play Mortal Kombat. Like,
yeah, well, the most recent one's got a little bit of it, but yeah.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like with RPGs, that's about like character progression and customization and loot. And so to be forced to play a specific character and then they have to kind of retroactively work backwards and try and think of ways to give an established character a variety of loot. It's putting the cart before the horse sort of thing. Like
yeah,
it's not like with a game like Spider-Man on PS4. That works because the entire game is built for Spider-Man. So he has customization, but that customization is allowed to be super flexible because the entire game is built just for him.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you have a whole roster of characters with very different powers, but they all have to do the same things.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah.
And it hasn't been said, but it links to what Matt has just said in the chat. He said it'd be like Destiny, but your choices of characters are Zavala, Ichor, and Cade.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Perfect example. And like it hasn't been that is such an important point because let's face it, like in a live service game, who wants to be the same character as someone else?
Now, it's interesting you mentioned that because that's actually one of the big problems with the live service aspect because they have actually made it so that you can't play a multiplayer mission with somebody using the same character. So that's a problem when it comes to a small roster of 6 that we start with. Like it'll be less of an issue later on when you build it out. But it seems that the way they want people to play this game is that you sort of have like a handful of characters that are your mains that you sort of have worked on and built up. And then when you jump into a game with other people online, if somebody else is already playing the thing that you wanted to play, then you've got the option of maybe 1 or 2 of the others that you're comfortable and familiar with. And I don't like that. That's the thing that really sucks for me because if you've got your favorite and you can't play with your favorite, that's a bad experience. So, yeah.
I mean, look, if the game had the scope of something like a Destiny or like a Guild Wars or a World of Warcraft, if the game had the content to back up the idea, then it would be a different story. But you can't ignore critical consensus of boring enemies, boring fighting, stale endgame. I feel no need to justify this game's existence until it's at a point where it's good. Like
I'm going to be fascinated to see what it looks like in 6 months' time. Like I'm really curious to see how it goes post-launch with some of the stuff they're going to add in the short term. But I guess I wouldn't say it's a bad game to recommend purely on the basis of the campaign, but I probably wouldn't buy it on launch at full price for that reason. Like, I'd wait for a little while until it gets discounted, goes on sale or whatever, and pick it up for the campaign, even if you're not planning on playing the live service parts of it. I think it's still worth playing as a fun experience, but the rest will depend on what they do. I really do think, yeah. No live service game is good on launch. Like, we kind of know this. Like, what has really succeeded on launch as a live service game without having huge amounts of stuff added to it over time?
That's definitely true, but for me, that's because for me the problems with Avengers are more fundamental than its scope. Like, you take the same small seed of Destiny or small seed of like a MMO, and then at that starting point, I like Destiny 1.0 a lot more than Avengers 1.0. You know?
Yeah. I mean, there is also the fact that of like the whole superhero fatigue, like. Just because it's a video game doesn't excuse it from being part of like the wave of exhaustion of superhero media, like as well, especially with an IP that's been around for the last 10 years or whatever it is. Like, I find it hard to give a shit about Avengers anymore, like I think Christian has said.
Yeah. I think we're in an interesting space with the superhero stuff, because I agree we definitely hit saturation point like a year or so ago when Avengers was sort of wrapping up its cinematic arc. But I almost feel like they've kind of hit at not a terrible time now, where there's been a significant gap, partly due to COVID, where we haven't really had any new, Marvel stuff at all. Aside from the odd sort of, I guess, TV thing, but even then, not really much at all, where people are kind of maybe, like, there's definitely pockets of people out there that are kind of ready for more. Maybe not necessarily Avengers, but they've maybe made the smart move of not trying to just recreate the MCU Avengers with this game. Like, they've definitely done their own thing, which is kind of partway through the comic book and sort of MCU sort of movie Avengers. And that they, for the character portrayals that they've done, I think they've actually hit the mark for the most part. Like, their portrayals of Kamala Khan is a standout. Like, she's fucking awesome in this game. Like, she's really, really cool. The character sort of progression, development of her as a superhero throughout the story, the voice acting, everything, just brilliant. Like, really, really good. But even the other ones that we kind of like, we have a disposed sort of image of, like, Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, and to see anything that's not that, you might think would be quite jarring. But I think it's actually Troy Baker who does Tony Stark for this one, and he does a really, really good job of... Hang on, is it Troy Baker that does Tony Stark? No, it's Nolan North, sorry. Nolan North does Tony Stark.
The other one.
Yeah, he does a pretty good job. The only complaint I would have with his portrayal of Stark in this game is that it's a little bit sort of Uncharted Drakey for me. Like, you definitely sometimes, if you weren't looking at the character model on the screen and just sort of hearing the lines, you could almost be forgiven thinking to yourself, is that Drake that I'm hearing right now? No, but it's still good. And Troy Baker plays Hulk, Bruce Banner. And Bruce Banner is, again, one of the standouts in this game. Like, Hulk, not so much, but Bruce is fucking awesome. Like, really, really good character journey in this game, particularly the way that he interacts with Kamala. Really big fan of it. Even like, people were complaining about the way that Black Widow looked when we saw the first footage of this game, like way back when we got to do the PAX demo a year or so ago. I can't actually tell if they fixed anything about the way she appears, or whether we've just gotten more used to the idea of it not being sort of the same sort of movie version of Widow. But I think that it was actually done pretty well. She fit the story quite effectively. The voice work with it was great. I don't think she looked jarring at all. I think she fit right in. The only sort of weirdly weak character in the roster as far as the story went was Thor, and that was mostly because he sort of shows up late and he doesn't really do a lot, which it was kind of odd. But the rest of them were pretty strong, I felt. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, everyone's going to have different subjective opinions on how they sit with the video game version of the Avengers, but I don't know that the fatigue is as big an issue now as it would have been a year ago, is kind of what I'm getting at. So, yeah.
I think if all of these characters had been, like, obscure Avengers members, it would have been a lot better. I think, like, if all the characters had been like Kamala Khan and, like, sort of no-name Avengers who hadn't been on the screen, I might be a bit more interested in it, because it's something... like, exciting and new and different powers, because, like, that I think that's what kills it for me, is that, like, I know what to expect, even having never played the game and only seen footage. Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, Black Widow, Hawkeye, none of those characters are going to do anything that I don't expect. Like, or that, like, will surprise me. Like, they're not going to, like, Iron Man's not going to do anything I haven't seen before. So I have no interest in watching him on the screen do anything.
Yeah, that's
It's
fair.
a weird thing to think about. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the saturation thing for you as a person. Absolutely. So I get that. Yeah. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I think that people will land on this in different ways depending on what they're going in expecting. But like if you're going in for the live service stuff, I'd probably approach it with caution. But if you're going in just for a fun single player game, then you'll probably find that. So yeah, it's good. Is there anything else sort of games related you guys want to chat about before we jump into some industry news? No?
Really, I just played more Destiny, chipping away at Ghost of Tsushima more. I'm really hoping to finish that before Mario 3D All-Stars comes out, but I've only got a couple of days, I think, right? That's like the 18th or something.
What is the situation with availability of that game, Christian? Are you on top of that? Like, are we going to be able to purchase it digitally?
So
yeah.
They've
done like a limited amount of digital availability, though, haven't they?
No, not a limited amount, a limited window.
Okay.
So it's unlimited until like March 31st or something next year. It's super weird that they're doing that, like announcing ahead of time an end date for digital sales. Like, that's such a Nintendo thing to do. Like, who else does that?
Yeah.
But like his games sometimes eventually get like delisted or whatever. But for a big title like this, it's bizarre. Yeah.
It's artificial scarcity that kind of looks a bit manufactured to drive demand in a way, but
yeah.
I don't know. It also could be. Part of me wonders whether it's sort of because they only want the bundle, the All Stars bundle, to be available for a short time, and they're planning on making them separately available after that.
That's a lot of people saying is that afterwards they'll be a la carte or something, but there's no that's just a hope. There's no evidence for that. So
yeah. There's certainly a lot of people out there that just want to play Galaxy and don't care too much about the other ones. Yeah.
Like I get it if there's a limited physical distribution, that's fine, but limited digital is weird.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh no, we've run out of ones and zeros.
Yeah. The only other thing I did this week, somewhat tangentially gaming related, was built a new PC for a family friend, which is always a fun experience. And it was the first time that I built maybe 5-6 computers, but everything just went perfectly smoothly. Like, there was just no problems. Everything just pop, no faulty parts, booted up first try. It was very
must be nice.
Yeah, it was a lovely experience, and now it's made me want to like get a new computer for myself, but I don't think I can justify that.
Not eyeing off any of these super new graphics cards that are doing the rounds at the moment.
The 3080s. I would love the 3080, but they are truly limited. Like, most of the stores that are selling those in Australia are doing like raffles, where you have to like win a raffle to get to be able to buy one of the new cards because they're so limited.
Yeah. Isn't it weird sort of thinking back on like almost this generation of PCs sort of graphics cards, being such a roller coaster ride of, all of this shit with crypto mining and driving the scarcity and the prices of those all over the place for a couple of years. Yeah. Super.
And there was some natural disaster that like flooded either AMD or Nvidia's like factories, and that drove up scarcity at one point too. And it has been a wild ride.
Yep. Well, I don't know if many people will be affording a new super graphics card as well as new consoles. I think most will probably choose one or the other, but I don't know.
Hey, those 3080s are cheaper than the last generation and nearly twice as powerful. Nearly double the processing power, and they're cheaper. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yep. Nice. All right, well, let's jump into some other news then. So, we've kind of peripherally talked about a couple of things that have happened over the last fortnight. Xbox came out and finally listed prices for their consoles that are launching in November. We know we've got the PlayStation thing coming up in the next few hours. We also had Ubisoft sort of do their next Ubisoft Forward event, which is kind of their E3 replacement sort of live stream where they're talking about upcoming games and things that they've got going on. Now, last Ubisoft Forward event that occurred, I think, was about a month or so ago, and it was just as all of the controversy was hitting around the workplace sort of harassment and bullying and sort of different sort of head figures within Ubisoft. They're one of the lead creative director sort of been slammed for some pretty heinous stuff, particularly against some of the female workers in the team, and ended up getting fired. And they've sanctioned or fired or quietly sort of moved out a bunch of top figures over the last month or so. But we were wondering, like, are they actually going to address that at this presentation, or are they just going to sweep it all under the rug and talk games again? As it happens, they did address it, but in again the most sort of softball way possible, where Yves Guillemot, the CEO of Ubisoft, sort of came out in a video that was posted before the Ubisoft Live sort of stream, and it was posted on their Twitter account and also made available on their website. And a lot of people sort of said, well, why isn't this part of the Forward event? Because a lot of people are going to miss it if it's not part of the sort of main production. And their excuse was that they didn't have time to put it in the presentation. Again, the same thing that they said last time. Yeah. So
didn't have time to put it in their own presentation that they
set the schedule for
and designed. Like,
what the fuck? Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, it's not a good look. But they have gone ahead afterwards and added it to the VOD version of the Forward presentation. So if you go and watch that again now, it actually will be at the beginning. But it's a similar story to what's been happening for the last month or so. The CEO has basically not taken any personal responsibility with his role in what was allowed to go on. But they have at least turned around and actually said, these are some of the quantifiable actions that we're going to be taking. So we're going to be, setting up a new edition of like a women's mentoring sort of program where they're actually pumping a whole bunch of money into that so that they have Ubisoft employees that are chosen applicants get mentorship from Ubisoft employees and hands-on experience. They're going to be launching a full program to support that. There's going to be more opportunities from underrepresented groups to sort of have that sort of support and mentorship. They're putting a whole bunch of money into different sort of outside funds that support that kind of diversity in development as well. But, I mean, yeah, a lot of it still is not really making up for a lot of the other stories that we've been hearing over recent months. So... but anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about some games. So there were a few things that they sort of showed off or announced. One of the worst kept secrets ever was that they're doing a remake of the Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. So have either of you guys got experience with this? Is that something that you've seen?
I don't.
Yeah,
no.
I've played them all.
Yeah. What's your take on them? Like, do you think they're good? Yeah.
There's Sands of Time, and then there's its two sequels, and then there was a reboot. Or a remake, or whatever you want to call it, which was a bit more like a Journey-esque in its like visuals, and like it was kind of simplified and a bit more like arty as opposed to
watching you play that one.
Yeah, you remember that?
Together, yeah.
Yeah, it had like it had themes of like light and dark, and there were like a lot more spiritual kind of enemies and things like that. While as the other three were like sort of high adventure, sort of classic. Tomb Raider-y kind of stuff, sort of maybe sort of Uncharted in feeling and gameplay. Mm-hmm. They of course had those three. I think were they on the PS2, PS3 maybe?
I think one was PS1, one was PS2. I don't know about the other one.
No, not PS1. No, they were further along than that. PS2, I think, at the earliest.
Okay, yeah.
Like Sands of Time. I really don't think that was PS1. Yeah, they were good. They were good games. They were fun. Good platforming. Combat was good at the time.
So I was going to say my experience with Prince of Persia was pretty much limited to the very OG Prince of Persia sort of platformer. Yeah.
I was going to say Ubisoft have said that this Prince of Persia remake is according to them, the first remake Ubisoft ever made.
Oh, really?
That in the past they said that because they've remastered some of the Assassin's Creed games, but this is the first like remake where they've actually sort of remodeled assets and re-recorded voice work and stuff that they've ever done.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean,
it was PS2 Sands of Time.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the waters are definitely primed for good remakes these days. I mean, we've had some pretty successful ones in recent years, so why not? Yeah. It's just one of those things. So what else did we get? We had some of you may remember Ubisoft announcing a game called Gods and Monsters a little while back. It's now been renamed to
title.
Oh my god, it's so bad. Immortals semicolon Phoenix Rising. Phoenix spelled with an Fenyx. And apparently the backstory behind why this rename happened in the first place is because they had legal action against Gods and Monsters by fucking Monster energy drinks. That's sort of saying...
I didn't know that, really.
Yeah, it was actually too close to some of the branding that they'd been using, and because of their sort of new push into esports in particular, they actually, challenged it. And I don't know if they won the case or if it was just something that, was going to be too expensive for them to fight effectively. They chose to change the name. So...
That's a shame, because Gods and Monsters is far more memorable than Phoenix Protocol, Alpha Century, whatever that was.
Immortals, yeah. It sounds like a boardroom think tank name for a game. Yeah.
You know what's funny is that I just worked out why, but it sounds like Injustice Gods Among Us.
Yeah.
Oh, Injustice sounds way better than that, though. Yeah.
I know, I'm just talking about the way it sounds. I was like, Gods and Monsters, that's already a game. I was thinking of Gods Among Us.
Gods Among Us.
Yeah.
I think that game looks cool. I'm probably going to buy that game. I think it looks good.
Yeah, something a bit different. Doesn't look too bad.
It's like create your own character Breath of the Wild is what it looks like.
Yeah, I can see that. We got a little bit more footage of...
Create your own character.
What's that in Breath of the Wild? Yeah.
Create your own character. See the key element there?
Yeah. We got a bit more from Watch Dogs Legion. It seems that they're actually going to be putting Aiden Pierce from the original Watch Dogs game in the game.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah,
the most memorable character ever, Aiden Pierce.
Exactly.
He's on our top 10 list of best memorable characters.
It's going to be in a post-launch expansion though. Like, it's not even part of the main game. So it's funny. It reminds me a little bit of some of those celebrity sort of shows that you see on network TV, where it's almost like the show itself is manufactured to try and make these people more celebrities than they actually are. So yeah, one of those weird things. There's a new Scott Pilgrim game coming, apparently. So
not new. That's an old Scott Pilgrim game from around when the movie came out.
Oh yeah, it's been 10 years old now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been in legal hell for ages because of license issues with the soundtrack. So it got delisted from all digital storefronts and everything years ago. But they finally sorted out the rights issues and they're able to republish it.
There you go. And a Game of Space, which is a new VR exclusive interstellar survival game, which is going to be coming to Rift and Fire. Yep, and Valve Index headsets later this year as well. So there's a cool trailer for that up on the site. So yeah, a little bit happening from Ubisoft, but they've obviously got their focus in other places currently at the moment as well. So
give me a new Rayman.
New Rayman? Yeah,
give me a new Rayman.
I've never played.
Give me a live service Rayman game. That's what I want.
But would you be able to make your own Rayman?
Customizable fists. Yeah. No, I want to customize the space in between his limbs. This is your invisible customization.
Yeah, fair enough. Christian, what's going on?
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about something a service that I've been hearing buzz about online called Parsec. Now, what this is, it's a free service. It's a PC client that can be used to basically. It basically mimics local co-op over the internet. So if you've got a game that's local co-op only, then you can, using Parsec, you can give another player remote access to your inputs. So they can basically use their own controller to be input to on your PC. Now, some of the side effects of this are some of the questions that are raised are, what's the latency like? Because that's a huge issue. So because that's stuff like Stadia, had terrible latency in a lot of cases. But the reason Parsec's been generating a lot of buzz is because it's such a smooth and amazing experience that even top fighting game players are talking about how good it is and how in a lot of cases it's better than the netcode of top fighting games. it's like it's in the vicinity of like 2 milliseconds response time pretty consistently.
Wow. Fighting games are the good test for it, really, aren't they?
Fighting games are a good test.
But Christian, my reaction times are faster than 2 milliseconds.
Yeah,
What's it do then?
There is still the fact that for the local player, they are playing locally, so they have a 0 millisecond difference. So there is still a slight advantage to the local player. But what like tournament organizers and stuff are doing is they are renting virtual machines, and then both players use Parsec to play the fighting game on the virtual machine. So they both have 2 milliseconds.
Yep.
And it's also crazy because you don't if you're the person who wants to like remotely control the game, you don't need to own the game. So like any multiplayer game, if you own it, you can use Parsec to play with somebody else online, and they don't need a copy. And Parsec even has like an arcade where people create lobbies for any game they want, and you can search the Parsec lobby for any game, and you can just remotely join.
This is free games, provided someone's willing to give rent out their machine.
Rent out their machine, yeah. So that is like weird for. Is that dodgy, or like? It wouldn't be if you have someone over to your house and you play co-op with them, that's fine.
Totally, yeah.
Does the fact that you're sharing it to the other side of the country or world change that? Like, I don't know.
Nope.
No, I know. And it's good like visual quality too. It's like 1080p, 60 frames a second. And they have another concern was like security. You know, if you're letting someone on the internet access something on your computer, what's the security like? They have a huge FAQ all about that. There's tons of settings and things you can control. But basically what it comes down to is you specifically choose the application and the input that they have access to. So they have no way of, so it's like the application that's running, so, you know, skullgirls.exe, and then the second input, so they can't use your keyboard, they can't access any other process, so it is pretty tightly controlled. That doesn't mean it's like there's no way to exploit it for like super elite hackers or whatever, but generally speaking, they do take their security pretty seriously. And yeah, I just think it's an interesting idea, and I want to see like how it develops, and I want to see if it starts catching on in a more mainstream way.
For sure. I've got two immediate thoughts. Number one is that's a fucking cool name. Parsec's an awesome name. I like that a lot. But the second one is like I would have to go and make a list, and I'd probably do that by going through my Steam library first and foremost. But I reckon there'd be a bunch of games that only offer local co-op that I would love to play online co-op for that wouldn't matter at all in terms of that amount of latency. Like,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, I think it'd be heaps.
Even things like digital board games that require everyone to own the game. You don't need to. You just one person owns the game, and then it's like bringing your board game to someone's house, and everyone can play it.
Yeah,
for
sure. That sounds cool. Yeah.
I want to test it out sometime as well, because it's completely free. So I want to get it. Yeah, it's completely free, and maybe together we can test it out sometime on the game.
Find a good local co-op game that we don't get to play very often because of that. So yeah.
Does that mean I can just give you control of games? I can just give you control of games on my computer, right? I could just you can just play my game for me. Yeah,
because you can, so you can do it on the application level. You can actually, if you want to, open it up to like just general remote access to more like mainstream things. There are people I've heard who like are working from home, and their work computer is like more powerful than their computer. So they're using. Remote desktop applications aren't new. That's been a thing for a while. But this is like free and fast, and like there's no sort of drawbacks to it. So people are using it for all sorts of things.
Adrian, are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Access porn on your computer?
No. outsourced shiny farming?
No, that's the coward. That's the coward. Why not just buy the shiny on eBay?
Yeah, it's true.
Save yourself the waiting. Yep.
All right. Well, let's dive into tonight's main segment. Now, this is actually one that Matt came up with, and it's a bit of a shame that he's not here to sort of discuss it audibly with us, but he can chime in from the chat if he's got anything particularly interesting to add.
It's better.
Yeah, yeah. So, from a man who has questionable taste, I thought this was a great one. We're going to be talking tonight about games that we actually really, really like that maybe label us as having questionable taste because everybody else pretty much does not. So, games that are almost universally considered to be bad that we think we actually really enjoy for whatever reason. Like, that might be that we actually disagree and we think that they're not bad, or it might be that we appreciate that they're total trash and we love them anyway. So, yeah, basically. And I'm assuming that each of us have sort of got like a handful of these that we can kind of chat about in turn. So, yeah, Christian, you want to kick us off tonight? What do you got that you think sort of fits the bill?
So, thinking about this question, obviously the first thing that came to mind was like, if I enjoy a game, is it bad? Like, surely if I enjoy it, then to me it's a good game. But then I get that you could talk about like a critical consensus, you know, considered in the gaming pantheon as like a lesser god. And like one of the games that came to mind for me, and maybe some people will judge me for this, is actually Final Fantasy 13.
Okay.
Which when it came out was panned as being
Linear,
overly linear. No side quests, like nothing to do. Some people even said like annoying characters with like vanilla in particular. But like I don't know, there's something about Final Fantasy 13. Visually, it's amazing, and still, even though it's a PS3 game, it still looks fantastic. And when it came out, it was one of the best looking games I've ever seen. The music is really cool. The music's great, and I really like some of the characters, like Vanilla and Fang, and even like Lightning in the original one. I don't know, like it just I get it. I get why it's a bad Final Fantasy game. I get that, but I don't know. I had a good time with it.
You know what? Like, it's panned, but it's one of the few Final Fantasy games I've actually finished. Maybe because it was so linear.
Maybe.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That wasn't the one that got remade. That was the one that had the second part released for it, wasn't it?
It had two sequels. It had Final Fantasy 13 Part 2 and then Final Fantasy 13
Lightning Returns. Yeah.
And that was like a more kind of third person action-y game. But because one thing that was bad about the game was some of the elements of the overarching story were really convoluted and like messy, and there was like time travel, and that always is a tough thing to nail. So Final Fantasy 13 2, they tried to like fix the storyline by just throwing 10 more time travel elements in, and just completely fucked it up even worse. So I never finished 13-2. That was a bad game. But yeah, Final Fantasy 13, not the best Final Fantasy game, not the best JRPG, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's one of the few that I haven't played actually.
Yeah.
I remember being happy enough with it.
Yeah. I think we played it at the same time or around the same time as well, Adrian. That might have been when we were living together.
Maybe that would have to be about 15 years old now, wouldn't it?
No. Final Fantasy 13 was, I want to say, oh shit, we're in 2020, aren't we?
Yeah.
I think it's like 11 years old.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Oof.
It's like me asking questions like that brings you down to my level of feeling really old now. Yeah. So yeah,
I'm like, no, it was a PS3 game. That was like 3 years ago. Wait a minute.
Yep. All right. Well,
I originally struggled with this question because I did the whole thing where, like, when we talk about like types of games, I went through my Steam library and was like, I enjoyed that. That was fine.
I got nothing from my Steam library.
And then I got to No Man's Sky. And I remember thinking, this is shit. But then I played it for like 70 hours. So I guess this is the definition of like this topic. Because I played it for 70 hours, enjoyed it up until I didn't enjoy it anymore. And like looking back on it, it's shit. Like, I think it's a bad game. Like, even now, it's still a bad game. Even like, no, don't you fucking dare. No, Luke, it's still bad.
Well, the only thing I was...
No.
I wasn't going to say this in relation to No Man's Sky specifically. not relation to No Man's Sky specifically, but I think that this is actually a common thread that I realised as I started thinking about games that would sort of, widely be considered bad. There's a bunch of games that on release were absolutely considered to be bad by a lot of people, but for whatever reason, they got better over time because of stuff that was added, ways that they reinvented themselves somewhat, expansions, content added, that sort of thing. No Man's Sky is definitely one of those because there's been a lot added to that game.
It's better. It's not good.
Yeah.
Like that's the difference. Just because it's like a glittered turd is still a turd. Like it's better, but it's not good.
We're not gonna agree on that, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Cancer is better than colon cancer.
Yes, exactly.
They're both cancer.
Yes, exactly. They're both types of cancer. So No Man's Sky came to mind first. So that's one of the initial ones. I've got a few more, but we'll pass the buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of did enjoy No Man's Sky on launch, so I guess I'd probably put that down as one of mine, but not one of the ones I wanted to talk about tonight. So I'm going to start off strong, and I'm going to put up my strongest contender for this category first. There is one game that I've had a lot of discussions with people over the years that I consider to be excellent. Like, this is not a case of me thinking that, yes, it's a bad game, but I enjoyed it anyway. This is me thinking a lot of people think this is a bad game, but I thoroughly disagree. I think it's actually a fucking awesome game, and people do not give it the credit it deserves. So it's one that is widely... Sorry? No, not Avengers. Not Avengers. So it's considered by many to be the weakest entry in a series. And it partly kind of doesn't belong with this series. It's the odd duck out, but I think it absolutely does belong because it's a continuation of the same sort of story and themes that exist in the rest of the series. And to me, it's not the number one spot in the series, but I actually think it's the second best. And I'll explain why in a second. And that game is Batman Arkham Origins. So, yeah. I'm a big fan of Arkham Origins. I think it is a fucking awesome game, and I'll tell you why. For the record, I think the best one in the series is actually not Asylum, which a lot of people would say. I think it's City. Arkham City is my favorite because I think that the story and the way they expanded that game out into sort of the wider sort of Gotham or Arkham City, if you like, and the rogue gallery and the different sort of quests that they had in that game, by far the standout. Arkham Asylum's great, but I think Arkham Origins is better. And the reason why is because I think that it actually benefits from some of the quality of life improvements that they made to City. In that you've got a lot more verticality in the game. You can make use of the buildings of Gotham a lot more effectively, and there's a wider area to explore. And there's a lot of that sort of pseudo open world stuff without making it a truly open world game that it benefits from. But I think that the Rogues Gallery and Origins, and particularly some of the boss encounters, the Deathstroke one is a standout, are just fucking mint. Like, they're really, really fun sort of boss fights. And the overarching story about Batman sort of evolving sort of introduction to the Joker as a villain, and the way that their relationship sort of progresses throughout the game and then sort of finishes at a point that kind of leads neatly into the other Arkham games, I think is excellent. Like, I really enjoyed the story, whereas for me, Arkham Asylum was a bit more sort of meandering in its story, and it didn't really finish on a particularly satisfying note. So I think that Origins is a really awesome game, and just because it's not a Rocksteady Arkham game, I think a lot of people should give it more of a chance because it's truly great. So, have you guys played enough of the Arkham games to kind of...
Is Origins the one where there was that big chunk in the middle of the city that was like just palette swapped from one of the other games?
I don't think
like it's
so.
The same. I think it is. Is it Arkham City where there's the big thing in the middle of the city? It's like a prison, or is it... There's something in the middle of the city of the map. It's like a large square area of the map. And in Origins, they used the same map. They just changed what was in the middle of it.
Oh.
I think it was Origins that did that.
I mean, that could be true. I don't actually know for sure. But even if it is true, the fact that I didn't pick up on that when I played it, I guess is probably testament to it not being a huge issue.
I think that's what threw me about Origins, is that it was a recycled environment from one of the main three games.
Okay.
Well, it's the same setting, so in a way that kind of makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, it does make sense. I remember it when I played it at the time having a problem with that, but I can't remember exactly why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't played Origins. I do own it, and it's actually a bit of a coincidence because on my Steam at the moment, in my library, there's a row for Play Next, and it's players like you love these games you've yet to try, and Arkham Origins is the big icon for me on that.
Yeah.
So Steam is actually pushing that at me at the moment.
One of the things that people really complain about with Origins is the cast, like, not being the same voice actors. Like, they've got they don't have Mark Hamill doing Joker. They've actually got Troy Baker doing Joker, but honestly,
he does a good Joker anyway.
Yeah, Troy Baker's Joker's fucking good. Like,
yeah, it is really good actually.
Yeah, I can't remember the name of the actor that does Batman.
It's really good in that it's very, very close to Mark Hamill's. That's why it's good.
Well, yeah, and the other thing too is it's at a different stage of Joker's life, so he doesn't need to be quite as sort of old and crusty as maybe Hamill was able to do it. Like he's got that growl that makes sense in being a 10 years his senior kind of thing. So yeah. I don't know. It's I think Arkham Knight is by far the worst out of the games because all of the stuff they added to the sort of gameplay with the Batmobile, like all of that just fell super flat for me. It was superfluous, not fun. The character arc with the Arkham Knight himself was just not as good as the stuff that they do in Origins. So
that's exactly the two reasons I never played that game was seeing all the Batmobile stuff. I was like, boring. That looks crap. And then seeing the Arkham Knight himself, I'm like, that looks shit.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna play it.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a bad game. I just don't think it was anywhere as good as the others. But it just baffles me when people say that this is a bad game because it's fucking not. So yeah. Anyway, that's my first one. My rant. I will die on that hill for sure.
I wanted to say that like I did struggle to come up with more modern games for this list. And what it made me think of was that I think that as a kid, a lot of us played bad games, but we were too young to have any sort of critical analytical opinion about games. So there's a lot of games I played when I was a kid that I love, but they're not the classics. Like not everybody only played like Link to the Past and Super Mario World. You'd rent whatever crap was at the video store, and you'd probably like it because you're a dumb kid. So like, there's games like Bob, B-O-B, which was like this Super Nintendo game where you play like a robot. There was James Pond.
Oh, yeah.
I love James Pond.
But like, no one talks about
Robocod.
James Pond. Yeah, Robocod. But it's a forgotten, dusty game that has no like staying power. And I also thought of the entire Master System. I loved Master System. Like that was I played Master System more than I played NES. And games like Wonder Boy and Alex the Kid and Choplifter and California Games. Like I played the crap out of those games, and most of them are not like classics. Like people don't look back fondly on a lot of these Master System games, even if they had versions on other consoles that maybe were more popular. Like the Master System versions we usually suffered in some way. But I don't know. Like a lot of that came to mind. A lot of games I played as a kid that are probably shit now, but I enjoyed them.
One that I reckon comes from that kind of era as well, that cops a lot of flack, is Dr. Mario. So a lot of people complain about Dr. Mario being like a much more basic sort of version of Tetris and like extremely repetitive and all that sort of shit. But I'm like, it's kind of like the nature of those games is that they are repetitive. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Like you still enjoy the general gameplay loop of them. Yeah.
Do you know there's a Dr. Baby Mario?
Yes.
How did that baby become a doctor?
Yeah. That's in the mobile game, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Baby Mario.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't want a baby prescribing me medication.
Could it deliver itself? How does that even work?
Perhaps. I agree with what you're saying, Christian. And for me, it's the PS1 era where there was like a plethora of shit. And I remember my dad, who's Malaysian, would like go back and forth between Malaysia and Australia, and we had a chipped PS1 so it could play anything. And he would bring back stacks of random PlayStation games. There were some gems in there like Mega Man X3 and like Final Fantasy 9, but there were always like totally random like Chinese PlayStation games. And I remember two. One was called Odo Odo Oddity, and it was you're a little wizard with 3 balloons on your back, and you're like flying through, like above the clouds through the sky, and there's like big pillars that are like collapsing that you have to dodge, and you like shoot things with a magic wand.
Sounds like Balloon Fight.
Yeah, it was weird. And the second one, I don't know the name, but it was like Bomberman, but instead of dropping bombs in certain areas of the map, there were like what are they on, like big pipes with water in them, like wheels. Like wheel locks. And so you used to like run to an area on the map where there was a wheel lock, and if you opened it, it would push water down. Sorry?
Like bulkheads?
Yes, bulkheads. They were like bulkheads. And so you turn the bulkhead and it would make water go psh, and you had to like wash other people down the drain. and I don't know what that game's called, and I've never been able to find it online or anywhere since. And it may have been a fever dream, but I wish I could find it. Both terrible games, but I played them heaps.
They should
and failed a lot.
Someone should make like the PlayStation Classic. They should make like the PlayStation chipped Classic, and it has like those 20 random Chinese games on it. Like,
yeah,
just for Adrian.
Be perfect. I do want to mention, apart from that, universally panned, but I loved it, was Bubsy 3D.
Wait, no. You're tricking, right?
No. I had Bubsy 3D. And the reason I loved it is because I didn't have a 64 and never owned Mario 64. So Bubsy 3D was as good as I got back then. And I played Bubsy 3D a lot and can remember it vividly very well.
So guess what, Adrian? Matt and I are both with you. I fucking love that game too. I thought it was good. Yeah.
To be fair, I never played Bubsy 3D, but it's notoriously bad. And I watched like a half an hour or like maybe 1 hour documentary about why Bubsy 3D is so bad. Not like a review, but like a behind the scenes about the development and like that sort of thing. And so I'm shocked to hear that you three are all.
It's terrible and it's ugly as sin, but I loved it. And I played it a lot. And I like his wisecracking voice lines are like burned into my childhood cortex. I remember so much of it.
Yeah.
Let's blow this popsicle stand when he finishes a level, stuff like that.
Yeah. It was definitely one of those so bad it's good kind of games. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember just being so, as a kid, it was so hard to understand because there were floating balls of yarn, and when you run up to them, if you hold the square button, you turn transparent, and you can then turn on the spot and shoot that ball of yarn away from you into enemies. And I was like, what is this? Why can I do that? What is this mechanic? It's just so jank. The whole game is just so janky, but
yeah.
I loved it.
You know, there was a new Bubsy game that got released a couple of years ago, which...
Yeah, I think I saw that.
Again, it looked real bad.
Roots, right?
Attack of the Woolies or something.
It looked shit. I like Bubsy 3D, but even I had my limits when it came to looking at what that thing was.
I think it was two. I think they've released another one.
Maybe?
The height of Bubsy is when it was one of the video games they played on Channel 7's Amazing.
Yes.
When they had to play off in a video game, Bubsy was one of those video games.
Yeah.
The best it ever got from Bubsy.
The original Bubsy was great. I love that.
Yeah.
Did you guys ever play Plock on the Super Nintendo?
Yeah, I think so.
It's he was like a little clay man. It's kind of like a Rayman knockoff. He had separate hands, separate limbs.
But surely this would have predated Rayman though.
I don't know. Original Rayman was a PC game in 92 or something.
Oh, jeez.
Rayman 1. Rayman came out in 95.
Oh my god, what is he?
Yes, 93. So Plock was first.
He just looks like a nondescript creature.
But it's just like a janky little platformer. But I love Plock. And I remember there was one stage where you play as one of Plock's ancestors, and it's black and white, and he has a mustache, and it's kind of ragtime.
Oh yeah.
It's the same game, but just black and white ragtime Plock. And it was great.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Did you ever play Zool?
Yeah, I played Zool. I played Zool on Amiga. I was going to mention Amiga too. I played tons of shit Amiga games, and Zool was one of them.
Can I tell you this quick story about Zool? I had Zool 2, and I loved it, and it was on the PC, and I played Zool 2 heaps. But there was a point in the game where it would always freeze, and so I never got to see the rest of the game. It was just one of those resigned moments of your childhood where you have no power to fix this problem.
Yeah, your troubleshooting skills haven't evolved to the point that...
No, there were no troubleshooting skills. Your parents don't care. Yeah, so all you did was play up until that point over and over again, and that's what you did, and that's how you enjoyed Zool 2.
Yeah. Well, the next game I'm going to talk about is one that I actually will fully admit is bad, but I enjoyed the hell out of it nonetheless. And that is the 2013 SimCity. You guys remember this thing? I know this game is bad, and I know all the reasons why it's bad. But for me, it was kind of just I really like SimCity.
I like SimCity.
And for whatever reason it is, I just can't approach games like even what's that SimCity like game that's super popular now? Even City Skylines. Yeah, I can't approach games like that aren't SimCity with the same sort of interest that I have in like the SimCity sort of franchise for some reason. It's just what I'm used to. It's like it's got this DNA that I really sort of connect with. And the 2013 version of SimCity had a fuckload of problems on launch because it was the first version to feature full online play. So they actually had like a network which allowed regions to sort of build multiple cities in the same region. You could even do like you could set them up to private if you wanted to, or you could set it up to like solo play or have it like always connected online. But you had the problem that kind of existed with this is that players had to be logged into EA's Origin service to play, and this was during the early days where Origin was even more of a garbage fire than it is currently, which actually interestingly the news just came out this week that EA is permanently shelving the Origin name, which is kind of timely. So the connectivity issues with it sort of they hadn't quite worked out the asynchronous play aspect of it well.
That was only half of why it was bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of other things too, but it was kind of one of those things where like I appreciated at the time that I had a fuckload of problems. It was nowhere near the standard that I was hoping for, but it was still the most recent version of SimCity and had a lot of other improvements to the core game that I was willing to forgive those things for the sake of having a good time with it. So I know it's bad. I know it's a bad game. You know what? I'd probably still either load it up and play it now even because I think that it's still fun. So...
What I remember about that game is exactly what you're talking about, how the cities were like fragmented. You had like a larger map with like smaller sub-cities, and each individual city was way, way, way too small. There was not enough room on each city, so they wanted you to have like these different nodes. But it never felt satisfying to me because I wasn't building out this one giant city. Like... I didn't like that.
Kind of depended on the way that you approached it, because I approached it from the angle of I actually liked that additional challenge because it had that layer of you could trade resources and stuff with other players as well.
You like specialize different things.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so it was different. For the people who wanted to just go the ever expanding sort of massive sort of build template, yes, it was going to not be quite as good as that experience. But it just depends on what you're going in there for. I agree it's probably by far the worst SimCity, even though it's the most modern one, but I still had a real good time with it. So, yeah, one of those things.
I only played, was it SimCity 95, I think? I think I played that one, and 2000. 2000
was great because it had the tie-ins with The Sims, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
I don't remember that, but...
I have one more, and again, PS1 game. Universally panned, but I loved it, and it's Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero.
That was also an N64 game.
It was on the 64, was it? Yeah.
Yeah, as well. And I rented that once, and took
again, it just rings true to what you were talking about, where you're young and you're stupid, and you just have no concept of doing anything other than just persevering. And because of that, you enjoyed it. And so it is terrible. It is a terrible game, full stop.
Yeah.
But I just played it over and over again, and I really enjoyed it.
I remember... Even
though it was impossible and hard and ridiculous.
Yeah. I just remember getting to one section where there's like a drop and like a rope or something. Yeah. And just having no idea what to do. Like he had to... I don't know whether you had to like jump over or grab the rope or something. Very fragmented memories, but I just remember something extremely basic getting completely stuck on and having no idea what to do.
It's infamous for like having some of the worst controls ever, because for some reason it was fighting game controls in a platformer, and you even got like block stunned the same way you would in a fighting game, where like if something hit you, it would push you backwards into like a pounding trap that would kill you and things like that. It was just terrible. Like you only have to watch a quick YouTube video to get an idea of why it was so bad. But again, played it endlessly, and enjoyed it, and have fun. I still have fond memories of it. And it had like terrible FMV video cutscenes.
Yeah.
Of like worse than cosplay, like character outfits, like
like good. Red Dot Halloween costumes.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Yeah. That was definitely a thing back then.
The last game I wanted to mention was actually a game I played this year, and it's a game that I don't think it's like objectively terrible, but I don't think it's very very good. But I really enjoyed it, which was I talked about Code Vein, and like which was the kind of steampunky, vampire-y, super Japanese Souls-like game. And like I think there are some fundamental problems with that game as far as extremely tired, boring JRPG storyline where it's like chosen one, like princess in disguise, handsome man, like it's just everything's just extremely anime. But sometimes that's what I'm in the mood for. It's just like a by the numbers anime protagonist game, and like the
bit of pulpy nonsense sort of thing.
Yeah, like just it was just super, pretty basic, and like the combat lacked a lot of the appealing things about Souls games. Like it wasn't as precise. It was too fast. It didn't have a lot of weight behind it, but it had a lot of customization to the combat. There were like heaps of different builds you could do, heaps of different weapons, and that was enough to like tip it into like the I really enjoyed it category. But like the reason I think it's bad is that I wouldn't really recommend it to anybody. Like unless you were into Souls-like games, but also really really like bland Japanese RPG storylines and weird cyberpunk aesthetic, like it's not a game I'd recommend to many people. Yeah,
I could see that. It did look interesting, but you're right. From an outsider's perspective, it did look like a kind of bad game. So you can tell it's like a AA game sort of thing. Like you can tell it's not like a full, huge polished AAA title. But it kind of struck me as, and this is a very sort of uneducated view because I haven't played these games either. It looked to me like a poor man's Darksiders almost. In a way,
in a way, it's like if you, it's kind of in between Darksiders and Dark Souls in some ways, All
right. Well, my last one for tonight, which Adrian, I'm not going to be crazy enough to say that I enjoyed Fallout 76. Let's just get that out of the way right now because we know that's an objectively bad game. I had my moments with that game, but I wouldn't say that I enjoyed it. But one that I did enjoy, which I think is a bad game, is Fallout 4. So...
No, I was going to say I'd agree, but then I don't think I enjoyed that. It's just a bad game.
I totally think it's a bad game, and I think there's a lot of reasons why it's a bad game. I think that the main protagonist is boring. His story is shit. The fact that he loses his son and then you don't hear squat about that until like way late in the game is a horrendous oversight in terms of like logical continuity of your key motivation as a character. The different forces that you sort of engage with are not that interesting. The core gameplay loop for me, though, was interesting and enjoyable enough that I still enjoyed it as a game. And to sort of have a big open area where you could meander around and do sort of like the scrap collecting and constructing and that kind of stuff. And people ragged on the base building in that game, but I enjoyed that part. Like, I actually thought that was cool fun.
Matt said in the chat that he enjoyed the base building too. I couldn't stand it. I was just like, touch it as minimum as I can and just... like run as far away as I could from that base building. I hated it.
Yeah, and now a moment to note that my perspective on Fallout 4 is undoubtedly skewed compared to other Fallout players because I have not played any of the other games besides 76. So my sort of basis of comparison, I can't sort of say I enjoyed New Vegas because I've never played it. I've never played Fallout 3, so I don't have any bar by which to compare to previous Fallout games. So that was it was my first entry into the franchise essentially, but I enjoyed it at the time of playing it because it was something new and the core loop of sort of, basically collecting scrap and building stuff and all the base building and, the different enemies that you fought and the environments and the setting I thought was cool. I enjoyed all that. But as a complete game from, beginning to end of like any sort of functioning story or sort of motivation for your main character, I appreciated that it was a terrible game. So, yeah.
Not acknowledge what Matt just said in the chat because to even utter those words is offensive.
Well, Matt reckons that Fallout 4 is better than Fallout 3, and I can't argue that because I've got no ground to stand on when it comes to whether that's true or not. So I think a lot of people would disagree there.
I think that all of the things that are good in Fallout 4 were already in Fallout 3, but better.
Yeah, Fallout 3 story is just as bad. Okay, well, that doesn't really sell either of them.
But the problem with Fallout 3, they don't railroad you down the main story. There's so much more to do in the open world of Fallout 3 than there is in Fallout 4, in my opinion.
Well, anyway, Matt being here in spirit, he has mentioned a couple which I think I'll just call out as well. So the one for him that inspired the whole question of the topic was Alpha Protocol, which is an Obsidian RPG where you play as a secret agent, and the third-person shooter mechanics for it are garbage. It's buggy as hell, but the narrative is so enjoyable that he loves it anyway. And he's replaying it right now with mods that drastically help the gunplay to make it tolerable. So apparently they tried to put RPG mechanics on the guns, and the guns are basically unusable unless you have skill with them. Yeah, that sounds like a problem. Yeah, for sure. I
just thought of something, and I was Googling it to figure out what it was. There's an old PC game. It came out in 1995. It's called Battle Beast.
Oh, I vaguely remember this, yeah.
It was like a fighting game where you play as like little like fluffy cartoon characters that turn into like robot monster fighty characters. But it was so bad it was almost like a cereal box game where you like got the disc in like on the front of a magazine or in a box of cereal. It was that bad.
You're unlocking like deep core memories in me.
Yeah. And does it help if I remind you that the bad guys were all toads? And and there's a section where you pick your character and the little character gets like flushed through a factory of pipes and then comes out the sewer, and then you fight like another battle beast, and it's like and you can transform between like robot thing into little creature during the fight.
Yeah, I remember the transforming. Definitely.
It was terrible, and I never knew how to control it, but I played it over and over and over again. I love that game.
There was also, did any of you play Rise of the Robots?
No,
but I was... sorry, go on.
No, it's just like really crappy PC fighting game that was like, just terrible, boring androids that fought each other.
Yeah, look up One Must Fall 2097. It's almost exactly the same thing, but it's my version of Rise of the Robots.
One Must Fall.
One Must Fall 2097.
Maybe that's a universal rule that we've kind of learned tonight. Like, if you have a game that has a semicolon as part of the title, it's probably got a good chance of being shit.
Oh, there's no semicolon. It's just One Must Fall 2097.
Okay, cool.
It does look similar to Rise of the Robots.
Yeah, I played that one a lot as well. Like a whole era of DOS games, that like terrible DOS games that we just played as kids because that's all we had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could add any number of them to the list.
Well, there you go. So
last one, Spider-Man Web of Shadows. I really enjoyed that game, but it was bad.
Was that PlayStation?
PlayStation 2, maybe? Or 3?
I want 3.
3? Yeah, Web of Shadows.
I super vaguely remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, it had Venom in it.
Oh,
it was good. I enjoyed it, but it was bad.
Yeah. Oh, we'll probably be looking back on this topic in a few years' time, and I'll be talking about Marvel Avengers again in a different way. So, yeah, entirely likely. All right, well, questionable taste. I mean, anyone listening, you decide. Do we actually have points with some of these, or are we like smoking weird kinds of drugs and there's nothing to stand on when it comes to some of these failures? So I've got no idea. Yeah. But I still maintain Arkham Origins, baby. Play that game. It's fucking good. Yeah. That's my final thoughts tonight.
It's in my Steam library. For some reason, I own it on Steam, and I've never played it on my computer. It's sitting there. Maybe I'll go play it.
Fills me with hope that the Gotham Knights game will be better than it perhaps looks on some of the early sort of previews we got. So we'll see. Warner Brothers Montreal. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, that's it. So, let us know if you've got anything you'd like to add to that list. Of course, you can reach us at all the usual places. So, mail at partyloaded.com, hit us up on Twitter at partyloadedshow, just partyloaded on Facebook, or catch us live on stream. You can actually contribute in the chat. So, we stream every episode at 8 p.m. Australian Western Standard Time on Wednesday, typically. And we will alternate every second Wednesday. We typically have a game stream of some sort. So, Matt and I actually did a bit of Avengering last week. And I think this week, coming up next, Matt's going to be checking out some Crusader Kings 3 action, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll get to see that firsthand. A game that has been reviewed super well by all reports. So looks interesting. It's another one of those kind of kingdom builder type games. It reminds me a bit of Total War, but a lot more sort of RPG elements, sort of long spanning sort of time periods. So pretty cool. But yeah, what are you guys playing this week besides the
Finishing Ghosts?
Finishing Ghost? Yeah, I'm well back onto the Ghost train as well. So
Cool.
yeah,
my wife and I recently paid off a loan that's been hanging over our heads. We just today paid it off, so that might open up the options to me as far as new games go, because I've been sort of having to be quite reserved with what I play recently. So maybe there might be some new things.
we don't have the flood of stuff that we normally
like that. What? I'm not blaming you.
Perfect. With that, we might save Adrian and kick off the end of the show. So thanks everybody for listening. Hope you've enjoyed the episode tonight. We'll be back, of course, again with another episode in 2 weeks. Stream next week. But until then, thanks for listening. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks, Adrian. Thanks, Christian. We'll see you next time. Good night.
The Party Loaded podcast is a Channel Endgame production. For this and more great gaming content, bookmark channelendgame.com.